Hey friends, welcome to another video lesson from the Jelly Roll Club. Before you begin this lesson, please be sure to have your 10-inch rectangles and your 9x9 squares. In this lesson, I will show you how to create pieces for the inside arc, how to join them with the arc itself, and then how to get the piece that goes on the outside for the arc. So in this lesson, you will need 1, 2, 3 pieces to complete your partial blocks. Let's get started. Again, before we begin, make sure that you have your 9x9 squares cut on the diagonal and rectangles cut that are 10 inches by 2 3/4. Okay, let's get going. In order to cut your rectangles, you're going to need to use your quick curve ruler. Grab the ruler and find the number 1 line across the top, and then locate the 1 and the 11. You're going to take and slide your ruler so that the upper edge of your rectangle is directly on that 1 line and centered between the 1 and the 11 before you make your cut. So you're double checking, make sure that it's centered between that 1 and the 11. And then you're going to make a cut in the curve in order to get the piece that becomes your inner arc. If your piece looks like this, then you've done it correctly. In order to complete the outer piece, you will take 1 half square triangle that you cut from a 9x9 square, and you're going to fold it in half. Carefully making sure that it's folded exactly in half. Next, you're going to take the ruler and line it up with the number 5 line. So you want this to be 10 inches across the bottom. So in order to do that, line it up with the 5 line on the fold and trim the 2 little tails that hang off the end. When you open your half square triangle, it will be 10 inches across the base. And now you're ready for the next cut. Grab your ruler, and you're going to line that up between the 1 and the 11. You're going to slide it all the way down so that the lower edge is lined up with the number 3. So you're going to take that and you're going to make sure that you're centered between the 1 and the 11 and that you're lined up exactly on the number 3 line. Once you've checked that it's on the number 3, centered between 1 and the 11, now you're ready to cut. Once you cut that bottom piece out, go ahead and put it in your discard pile because you're not going to use it, and your outer piece is ready to sew. Now that you have all 3 pieces that you've cut out, you are ready to begin sewing. First, take that inner arc and lay it on top of the pieced arc, right sides together, with 1/4 inch hanging off of the end of that pieced arc. You're going to come in and there's a little V that forms right where those 2 pieces intersect, right there. And you're going to want to come in and start sewing at 1/4 inch using a 1/4 inch seam, and you're going to sew along this curve. So you're going to have to stop and pivot in order to keep those 2 edges of those pieces lined up. The top piece will move to the left, the bottom to the right. And so you're going to want to make sure that you have a needle down function on your machine. First, you're going to want to make sure that the bed of your machine either has an accurate 1/4 inch foot or that you've marked the bed of your machine with a little bit of painter's tape in order for you to ensure that you have an accurate 1/4 inch seam. Take that inner arc and that pieced arc and line them up with a little bit hanging off of the end, about 1/4 inch. You're going to come in and you're going to locate that intersection where those 2 pieces meet, and you're going to drop your needle down right where they meet. Now you can adjust your pieces. You're going to want to take 1 or 2 stitches, making sure that you're keeping that 1/4 inch seam good and accurate along that edge. And then you're going to move the bottom piece a little bit to the right and the top piece a little bit to the left. And you're going to start sewing along that curve, adjusting carefully and stopping frequently. This is not speed sewing. You're going to have to take your time and sew slowly so that you can make sure that you have an accurate 1/4 inch seam and that you can adjust your pieces carefully. Make sure you're moving that bottom piece to the left slightly and that top piece to the right ever so slightly every time you adjust. And you're stopping with your needle down so that your piece doesn't get distorted. Remember not to stretch these pieces. They're both on a bias, so you have to be ginger when you take care of these, and you have to just move them ever so slightly, take a few stitches, pause, readjust so that you can keep that curve and that accurate 1/4 inch seam as you go. Keep sewing all the way around with that curved seam on top until you get to the very end of the piece, and you should have a little tiny tail hanging off, and you should sew right through that V-notch just like you did at the beginning. Once you have stitched that inner arc to your pieced arc, you want to flip it to the back and check your seams, make sure they are good and accurate, and then you're going to nip the 2 little bunny ears off the ends, and you get ready to press to the outside, so you're pressing it towards the pieced arc. When you are pressing, make sure you go in and carefully press that seam so that it lays against the pieced arc and away from that inner arc. It will help you with construction later on in the process. So make sure you're pressing that seam carefully, trying not to distort, making sure there are no puckers anywhere. You are just gliding your iron across that. You're not pressing hard. You're just using a very light touch. Then you're going to take that outer piece and you're going to match it up, flip it over, rotate it, and you're going to sew it just like you did the last piece, starting at a 1/4 inch with just a tiny bit hanging off, and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch all the way along that seam, making sure that you stop and you pivot each time. Last, you're going to flip that piece open once you've attached it, smooth it, give it a little press from the front with a very light touch, trying not to press very hard against the block so that you don't distort it. Flip your block to the back and make sure that all your seams are going towards the outside of the block. And make sure you press the ends and that your block is nice and flat. If your edges are not perfectly straight, don't panic, because we are going to be trimming this up in the final step before we join all of the pieces together. Don't forget to leave your comments and questions below. Hit that like and subscribe, and thank you for watching another video lesson from the Jelly Roll Club.